Okay, so I've just switched record on, which means we're going to get started and get stuck straight into it. For those whose first time it is, these webinars are for providing you with just general information and advice around self-management for arthritis. Sometimes we focus a little bit more on osteoarthritis. Sometimes we focus a little bit more on rheumatoid. Sometimes we get guest speakers in who are experts in the space. Now, we go through every effort in these presentations to make sure that this information is accurate, it's reliable, it's evidence-based. It's not intended to replace any kind of individual treatment advice of your doctor. So anything regarding individual treatments and individual management, always make sure you go to your doctor or your primary healthcare provider. In saying that, we'll give you plenty of chances to ask questions, have some discussion, and I'll do my best to help you out where I can. So what we're covering today, we're covering weight management. We're going to look a little bit about what the evidence says in terms of how, why it's one of the leading treatments for osteoarthritis, touch on its role in rheumatoid arthritis. We'll talk a little bit more about those mechanisms at play in terms of how they can affect pain symptoms and the ongoing management. And then we'll go through some tips and tricks, and hopefully they're practical enough to take home and implement in your daily lifestyle. Before I get started, what do we know about weight loss or healthy weight management? Does anyone feel like it's on their to-do list? They know it's something they need to be doing this year and looking at, or someone who's, you know, intended to lose weight, but always put it on the back burner?
It's Julie. One thing I'd say is that it's not easy to do, for me anyway. I find it hard to do.
And who else can relate to that?
I can.
Yeah.
Me too.
I've
Me
lost
too.
weight quite dramatically and then put half of it on again. It's very disheartening.
Great to hear your stories and your experiences. And I hope, you know, that kind of also resonates with each and every one of us, because it's not easy, it's quite hard, but there's also reasons behind that. And that's what we're going to try debunk today. So there is really good evidence that weight loss has a meaningful effect in osteoarthritis. And so there's really good reasons behind why it's considered one of those cornerstone treatments in not only that longer term management of osteoarthritis, but also improving function, improving your pain symptoms, preventing any kind of worsening of the condition. Even in the cases of rheumatoid arthritis. So what the research currently tells us is that when you are over your healthy weight range, not only does it put you in a high risk bracket for developing osteoarthritis, but also worsening the pain symptoms that come with it. So some research suggests that it can potentially act as a trigger to rheumatoid arthritis, and it certainly increases the severity of the disease. So just a quick reminder to everyone to make sure those microphones are on mute. Just mute all. Okay, so according to our evidence, we know that overweight women, and this would be women who surpass a body mass index of 25, have nearly 4 times the risk of knee osteoarthritis. As for overweight men who surpass that body mass index of 25, they have nearly 5 times the risk of knee osteoarthritis. Has anyone checked where their BMIs are at or body mass indexes are at?
Over the top.
Over the top?
Yes.
If we don't know what I'm on about, or you've never looked into it before, there's a calculator you can actually use on the Heart Foundation website. It works it out for you and it tells you exactly what your body mass index is. It's a really good baseline measure to get. You can also talk to your doctor about working that one out for you. But the reason why we're seeing such a high risk of knee osteoarthritis in overweight and obese people, there's two major pathways involved, one being the load and another being the inflammatory pattern. So that's something I want to go through a little bit more here. In people who have knee osteoarthritis and carrying extra weight, it has a really big influence on joint load. So what we mean by this is that every time you take a step, it's going to be about 4 to 5 times higher in joint load than what it would be with a normal weight. And so as that weight increases, the load on your knee also increases exponentially. So that's huge. When your joints are really having to deal with excessive compressive forces over long periods of time, eventually it's those biomechanics of the joint and how they function which are going to be affected. So what this means is that it can lead to things like malalignment in the joint, gait abnormalities, and of course, with that wearing down of the cartilage, the less shock, the less force is going to be absorbed. Therefore, we're going to be feeling those compressive forces a little bit more. You might have that paired with low skeletal muscle mass, which can often be the case when we fall into that higher weight category. And this can lead to the ongoing problems like structural changes. It can affect the bone. It can cause a loss of stability and support. So that's what we mean by, affecting the load on the joint. Secondly, we also have evidence that's suggesting that excess weight can increase the inflammatory processes in the body. And so what we mean by this is that when we carry excess fatty tissue, it has this ability to produce inflammatory molecules and things called cytokines. These are the things in the body that affect cartilage breakdown, bone loss, and also increase things like hyperalgesia, which is basically that sensitivity to pain signals. So what it's like, hyperalgesia is almost like you're turning up that volume dial when it comes to pain in the body. So your brain's thinking things are a lot more painful. So overall, you can see we've got a double whammy here in how risk is associated to being overweight or obese. So a lot of studies show just as little as 5% weight loss can reduce pain by 30%. Has anyone heard that before? Does anyone know that's how much you can reduce pain through weight loss? This is basically the same result that people get in terms of the people who take anti-inflammatory drugs and report achieving a reduction in pain by 30%. So for some people, this weight loss can result in a pain reduction by up to 50%. So it's even greater for some other people. So if your healthy weight range is, let's say that target is around 70 kilos and you weigh 80 kilos, that means just a 4 kilo weight loss can have very impactful outcomes. So it sounds like a, negligible amount of weight loss. It doesn't sound like very much, but it can have a huge, meaningful effect on our condition. And so there's a lot of different benefits when it comes to weight loss. Not only can it help with improving pain, but there's good evidence it can improve function, even reduce the likelihood for a joint replacement or a knee surgery. So when we look at the vast majority of people who require that joint replacement surgery, they usually actually fall into an overweight or obese category. So not only is weight management a part of your current clinical guidelines for knee and hip osteoarthritis management, but it's also strongly recommended before going down that surgical pathway to reduce the risk of things like post-op complications like infections, blood clots, long healing times, and the need for revision surgery later down the track. So what we want to say here is that there is a lot of motivation to lose just a little bit of weight, and it suggests that weight loss can actually give you a lot of bang for your buck. So we've looked at several studies and, how weight loss can help with osteoarthritis. We have one here where they looked at the association between high body mass index and risk of osteoarthritis, but they looked at the occurrence of structural defects in knee osteoarthritis, and two, the progression of osteoarthritis using radiography. So what they basically did was they took people, they looked at the X-ray data from 3 different groups of people, and what they found was that people who had a lower body mass index had a reduced chance of having and worsening structural issues in the knee that were directly related to osteoarthritis. So this really highlighted the significance of weight management in the context of this condition. And what's surprising here is that not a lot of evidence actually exists on this relationship. But in theory, we know this relationship exists, and we have now the hard data here from this study to confirm it. So usually with studies like this, it can be really challenging to follow those structural changes in the knee. And that's really just because we don't have enough time in a research study to observe how those changes in the knee joint occur. It's something that needs to be tracked over the course of a lifetime. And of course, that would take a lot of commitment from a researcher to follow someone over the course of their lifetime and see exactly what their weight is doing to their knee joints or their hip joints. But it basically confirms that weight loss is really important for the protection of our load-bearing joints like the knees and the hips. So it could be really worthwhile looking at that body mass index. So we've established there are a few benefits to losing weight in this context, but what is the most effective way to achieve weight loss? This is a question we get all the time, especially on our info line when people want to get started. So in a recent 18-month randomized control trial, there were some researchers who aimed to investigate which method for inducing weight loss was the most effective for overweight and obese adults. So they looked at these adults with knee osteoarthritis specifically, and they factored in its impacts on knee joint loads, inflammation, and clinical outcomes. So one group was prescribed diet only, another group was prescribed exercise only, and this was to lose weight. And then there was another group that was prescribed diet and exercise together. So which intervention do you guys think was the best for improving all things knee pain, function, and mobility?
Diet and exercise.
Diet and exercise group. So I guess all 3 groups did really, really well, right? But the winner who came out on top was the diet and exercise combined group. So results found that the intervention actually led to reduced knee joint loads, reduced inflammation, better clinical outcomes. And so it was really promising in terms of the overall benefits that came from implementing an intensive diet and exercise regime. But what's important to note that while diet and exercise is excellent for arthritis, it's actually the weight loss outcome that really produced some meaningful benefits when it came to pain symptoms and function specifically. So there is a perception that the more the weight loss is produced, the better it is for our arthritis. And so there was a study that found that if you are overweight or obese, losing just 10% of total body weight can cut that arthritis pain in half. And losing an additional 20% can cut arthritis pain by another 25% or more, and so on. So what they said here is that pretty much the more weight loss that is produced, of course, the more force is going to be reduced, which is going to create less strain, less stress, and less pain in the knees. But whether this is a better outcome for some people is really debatable here. And this is just because the evidence suggests that any weight loss is good, but the best weight loss is always going to be an approach that's sustainable and incremental. So if your body mass index is above 30 and it falls into that obese category, 10% weight loss, it's not a lot, but it's proven to be very good for reducing osteoarthritis symptoms, whether that exercise is included or not. Another increment from 10 to 20% is really good, but it's not going to be as good as that increment from 0 to 10%. So just goes to show that any weight loss you can achieve is going to be great for your arthritis when it comes to pain symptoms. So aiming for that low 5 to 10% weight loss, it's really a great start. So this leads me into answering the next question that we get all the time. What is the best diet for weight loss? So when it really comes to dieting, there are a lot of different iterations of what a good diet for weight loss looks like. So when you probably talk to people, you're probably either hearing about the keto diet or the low carb diet. What's another one? Maybe low fat diet, intermittent fasting. Has anyone else heard of some other dietary approaches that their friends have banged on about? I think they're the few of the main ones.
I've used Noom.
Yeah. What did that one include?
That was positive psychology.
Okay.
It's an app. You come up on your phone and you record everything you eat each day. And it's counting calories based, actually.
Counting calories.
It helped me lose 10 kilos, which was good, but I've put 5 back on.
There's definitely a lot of different approaches out there that we can follow. So we have some pretty good data that shows those popular diets that I just mentioned can certainly work for weight loss. But what we don't have is like really good hard data to show us how to maintain that weight loss and what's the best approach for that. So apart from some short-term success for some specific approaches, including low carb diets, the popular dietary approaches fare poorly in terms of weight loss, weight maintenance, and adherence. So once that 6-month milestone has passed, there's research to suggest that none of the popular approaches are actually deserving of that title for the best diet in weight loss. So there was this randomized control trial that actually followed over 800 overweight adults, and it aims to look at the impact of diets that were varied in fats and proteins and carbohydrate compositions for the purpose of inducing a weight loss. So participants were assigned to either one of 4 diets with similar food options, which were designed to meet cardiovascular health guidelines. The diets were either low in fat or high in fat, and they varied the carbohydrate content quite a bit, with protein making up the remainder of the diet. So each person in these groups were offered group and individual instructions and support sessions over the 2-year period that this study went for. After 6 months, all the diets, they did result in an average weight loss of about 7% from initial body weight. But much of this weight loss was actually regained over the 2-year period. So these findings are very complementary to other studies across the literature. And so it's telling us that no matter what diet program we're following, maintaining weight loss is actually where that challenge lies. So there's been a large number of high quality clinical trials that clearly and very conclusively show that fat, protein, carbohydrate composition of the diet, it doesn't matter as much for achieving weight loss. It's more about following a sensible eating plan and how you're going to stick to it that matters the most.
I've stuck to an eating plan and I've lost 14 kilos, but I have an eating disorder as well, and it doesn't make losing weight easy because I'm walking that fine line between setting off my eating disorder and losing weight, and it's been a real struggle. And you sort of, I'm dieted out. I'm sick of hearing the word diet.
Diet?
I'm drowning in the word diet because I'm just burnt out.
Thank you for sharing that, Gail, because that actually brings us very nicely into what we're going to talk about now when it comes to, you know, just losing that word diet and that approach. I've just launched a poll where I've asked you guys, is losing weight hard? And, you know, a large proportion of us are agreeing that, yes, it is hard. It's not easy. Some people it can be, maybe. So we're going to move on from this poll. Give it 2 more seconds if you haven't answered already. And I'll share those results after. Let's talk about why it actually is hard, because it seems like a lot of us have attempted to achieve weight loss before. Some of us have achieved our weight loss goals. Some of us have regained the weight that we've lost. So we can all probably acknowledge that it does require a lot of patience, motivation, perseverance, discipline, yes. But for some people, it can be much more difficult than that. And so it's really important to unpack why it can be hard in the context of understanding and overcoming our own barriers. So in the past, if you found it difficult to stick to a weight loss program, I asked you the questions like, was the diet and lifestyle too rigid? Did you lack support? Were unrealistic goals set? Were you time poor? Did you have financial constraints? These are just some of the very common barriers that prevent a lot of us from being able to eat a little bit healthier and move a little bit more. But in terms of weight loss attempts and why they fail, it actually goes a lot deeper than our motivation and willpower. Why diets fail? It can be because the diet is too restrictive for us. You might have the mindset where you want immediate results, but coupled with an all or nothing mindset. Maybe you're not focusing on the lifestyle changes that are more important than the rules of the diet. Maybe you don't have a plan. Sometimes we also have biological factors and things like a biological set point, which make it very hard for us to overcome, to get past, weight loss goals. So things like hormones, medications, these are things that can cause weight gain. And so when we focus solely on short-term goals without incorporating long-lasting lifestyle changes, not having a well-defined plan, these can all contribute certainly to the challenges of achieving and maintaining weight loss for a long time. So this is why it can be really important sometimes to have a health professional who is receptive, they're supportive of you, they're open and transparent with you throughout this journey, and assess your level of readiness to change your lifestyle and the behaviors that could be setting you back. So often I say when the diet fails, as it inevitably does, we somehow actually convince ourselves it's our fault. And we do this, when we do this, we don't have enough discipline, which is not often the case. And so there is largely a psychological component to this as well. So often with dieting, if we look at why they fail, it can be due to those unrealistic expectations. It can be due to overly restrictive approach, jumping into it with that black or white style of thinking around food. For example, I'm going to cut out sugar, I'm never having it again. Who's ever said that to themselves? Or I'm not going to have pasta because it means that I'm going to gain weight. So we kind of put foods into this black or white category, good or bad buckets. And so it's not uncommon for this style of thinking to drive people into adopting very restrictive diets that either eliminate entire food groups or severely limit caloric intake. But it can, when we do this, it can be really difficult to maintain in the long run, especially if it's not done correctly, and can lead to emotional struggles here. And this is where the psychology comes into it. It can lead to feelings of deprivation and cravings. It doesn't leave much room for flexibility or slip ups. So when we do eventually slip up, or we do give into one of our bad cheat meals, it can be super discouraging. It can bring up feelings of shame and guilt, a loss of confidence. And so what we see here is a pattern. So we see short-term fixes, fad diets, emotional struggles paired with negative and rigid thoughts around food, like I can't have X, Y, and Z, or I'm not allowed to have X, Y, and Z. These things, we see these things perpetuate unhealthy eating patterns and feed into that cycle of dieting failure. So this is why we say we do need to start with the mindset and look at ditching the diet. When our diets fail, it's usually just a sign that maybe we need to take a step back. We need to be more flexible. We need to rethink our goals, change our mindsets, and really look at that relationship we have with food. So sometimes lifestyle changes are ultimately what's required for that successful weight maintenance, but your readiness to make these changes really come about from mindset. We do have to address the behaviors, the food choices, and that willingness to commit to them over a longer term. So when you do struggle with your relationship with food, you struggle with emotional eating, maybe it's the cravings, you can't seem to get on top of your hunger, you eat healthy, but you're not seeing any changes in your weight. Maybe you struggle with that all or nothing mindset. If you're trying new diets and food trends, the foods are consuming you. If you're feeling overwhelmed around food, if you want to lose weight, these are all the signs that really say you could benefit from working with a health professional like a dietitian or a credible nutritionist who's really there with the, who are really equipped with that skill and that knowledge to help you overcome these particular struggles. So what I encourage you to do is think about the reasons you want to lose weight. If you've been considering weight loss yourself, is it because you want to reduce the risk of developing a certain chronic condition like heart disease or type 2 diabetes? Have you tried everything else to try reduce that osteoarthritis pain in your knees and your hips? Or is it because you really want to boost self-esteem and confidence? Everyone has a lot of different reasons and different goals, but if you do decide to embark on a weight loss journey, really go back and think about what's motivating you to do so, where your values lie, and what your reasons are for making these changes before jumping straight into it. This level of readiness, it can change over time, and that's perfectly normal, but it's really important to reassess that motivation periodically. So we have enough research that tells us you can achieve a healthy weight and get healthy without restrictions. But setting goals here is where it's really important. So the reason why we talk a lot about goal setting is because it gives us clarity on what you want to achieve. It helps you focus time, focus energy, and resources on specific objectives, reducing the likelihood of feeling overwhelmed or directionless. It also helps you kind of check in on that progress you're making. So it's a really powerful tool for healthy weight management and weight loss. But what's important here is to aim for those small increments as opposed to large increments. We said earlier before that we didn't need to aim for huge amounts of weight loss, like 30 kilos, you know, to improve our arthritic pain. A small 5 to 10% is all we need to achieve to see any kind of improvement. So not only does this incremental weight loss provide us a good opportunity to achieve those benefits, but it helps us focus on establishing a foundation of good habits, such as increasing our exercise, adopting balanced nutrition, dietary habits. It also contributes to our overall well-being. So you'll find a really big difference in things like your mindset, your motivation, and those outcomes if you were to focus on those smaller, incremental, achievable goals as opposed to just focusing on the outcome you want to achieve. So weight loss, it's one of those things that it doesn't happen overnight. It does take a little bit of discipline, but be prepared and open to it taking time, and plan for those little slip-ups, just because it happens to everyone. We all fall off the wagon. But if we have that healthy mindset, we can always get straight back into it. So what I've included here, just some practical ways to maintain food freedom to stay on track. So focusing on what to include, not exclude. So this is where we do need to understand why there is a lot of hype around fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, healthy fats. There is good reason as to why they get a lot of hype and why you should be increasing them if you intend on losing weight. The guidelines, they do recommend 2 pieces of fruit per day and 5 pieces of vegetables. And that's a really great, realistic, achievable target. You can do this by adding an extra piece of fruit into your breakfast, or making or having a piece of fruit with your snacks. As for dinner, just throwing in an extra vegetable or 2. These are the small starting points that are key to establishing those longer-term healthier habits. Enjoying a variety of foods is another one, but also being mindful of portion sizes. So a couple of weeks ago when I had my first webinar, I may have touched on this, but I mentioned you don't actually have to eliminate all your bad foods. Instead, just adjust portion sizes. And you can actually cheat your way into this by using smaller plates, or if you have snacks, portioning them into smaller containers or bags. What this does, it helps prevent mindless snacking or mindless eating, and it allows you to kind of keep track of your intake without exceeding that caloric intake. So it's a very easy, it's actually falls in line with those mindfulness principles that we always go back to. So incorporating your favorite treats into your diet mindfully, there's a lot of different ways to do this, and learning about serving sizes can really be a great starting point for this to help avoid unintentional overeating, but helping you, I guess, get a handle on swapping out higher calorie foods for lower calorie foods. So the most important thing to do is when you do have those treat foods, enjoy them. Don't feel guilty about them. 1 treat a day isn't actually going to prevent you from achieving your goals or hold you back on your weight loss goals. It's what you're doing across the whole day or the week or the month that actually counts. So find room to actually still enjoy those treat foods, but also still maintain those healthier eating habits throughout the day. And then lastly, drink plenty of water. So hunger can often be mistaken for thirst. So just making sure you're staying hydrated, you're drinking a lot of water is really crucial for not just good health and staying hydrated, but regulating that appetite. So I do want to play a little bit of true or false with you. I'm going to, challenge some understandings here and some knowledge. And I want to start with some of the most common weight loss myths and the questions that we always get. So the first one here, will carbs make you gain weight? Feel free to use the chat box to type in your answer. And then we'll move on to the next part. I'm loving those answers that are coming in. Excellent. Depends on type of cards. Good answer. So for the most part, most of us got that right. Answer is false. So carbs themselves are not going to make you gain weight. And like some of you said, unless it's the poor quality carbs or, you know, those processed foods that we're indulging in, maybe a different story. But those good quality carbohydrates, particularly those found in our whole grains, they're really important for weight loss and good health. Our carbs are something we don't need to fear. They're actually one of our primary sources of energy for the body and really important for actually maintaining energy levels throughout the day, supporting healthy metabolic functions. And because they contain such high amounts of fiber, not only do they have this ability to keep those blood sugar levels stable and prevent things like type 2 diabetes, but they're going to help with things like sugar crashes in the mid-afternoon, which drive you towards those sugary, sweet cravings that we end up giving into. They add a lot of bulk to the diet so they can keep you satiated throughout the day, and that's a really important thing to achieve whenever you're establishing healthy eating patterns. They're there to keep you from overeating, and so really great for promoting weight loss. For some people, reducing or cutting carbs can certainly help achieve that weight loss. And for some, it can be appropriate method, but data from our long-term research all collectively show that weight is usually regained very quickly in those people who adopt a really restrictive approach when it comes to carbs. So quality is what we really want to emphasize on here. Your whole grain carbs, such as brown rice, quinoa, your fruits, your vegetables, these are things which are rich in fiber. So fiber has a whole endless list of health benefits. Benefits for promoting digestive health, stabilizing those blood sugar levels, thereby stabilizing certain hormones in the body, but they're really helpful for weight management. And so when we can achieve satiety throughout the day with something like fiber in every meal, we have better control over our overall food intake. So when we have better control over our intake across the day, it makes it very easy for us to reduce that overall caloric intake and prevent overeating. And overeating of the stuff that probably isn't going to help with our weight loss goals as well. So balanced diets that include a variety of nutrient-dense foods, including those carbs, they're going to be a lot more sustainable and very conducive with maintaining a healthy weight. Our next myth, cutting fats out of your diet will help you lose weight. What do we think here? I love the false that comes in capitals. That's the attitude. Someone, it depends on the fats. Excellent. Okay, let's stick into it. So a lot like carbs, fats are super, super important in the diet. So fats themselves aren't going to actually promote weight gain, but different story if we're talking the poorer quality saturated trans fats. Generally speaking, fats have received a bad rap over the years. So there's been a lot of stigma towards this particular nutrient, but we actually need fats to balance our hormones, protect our hearts, protect our brains, even our joints. There's even evidence to suggest how beneficial they are for things like reducing inflammation and also absorbing things like vitamins and antioxidants. So healthy fats, they're packed with essential fatty acids, and these are the things that are known for their powerful ability to reduce inflammation in the body. And they can be found in our foods like avocados, nuts, seeds, fatty fish, and have this very effective way of keeping us feeling satiated again throughout the day. So these particular foods, very great for reducing cravings for our high sugar foods, and can actually help with contributing to weight loss with that whole balanced approach to eating. So our good quality fats are known as a healthy or unsaturated fats and provide a lot of essential nutrients. And so this image here is where you can see the most amazing sources of fats. So I said avocado, eggs, salmon, nuts, seeds. These are some of the best sources that are commonly encouraged across many, many weight loss programs, and for good reason. So let's jump into our next one. Skipping meals will help with weight loss. False. Okay, let's see what our answer is. Okay, so the most important thing here when it comes to establishing these sustainable, healthy eating habits is tuning into your hunger cues. So who's heard of this before? So it's pretty much that philosophy that if you are hungry, then you should eat. If you're not, then don't. So pretty much listening to your body and responding to its signals is a really, really important strategy in mindful eating. So eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're satisfied is a principle that actually emphasizes on tuning into your body's natural cues rather than adhering to just some external schedules or ignoring them as well. When we start to ignore these biological cues, and this is closely tied in with skipping meals, it's a very common driver of overeating, and often overeating the wrong foods as well. So it's really, really important here to understand that what foods you're eating, but how your body is reacting. And so this is why we really go back to that importance of satiety and eating a balanced diet with enough of the good carbs, the good proteins, good fats when it comes to weight loss. So foods really differ in their ability to make us feel full. And this is typically influenced by things like energy, so that calorie contents, but also the presence of different macronutrients like carbs, fiber, protein, and fats. And so usually lower energy dense foods such as salads, fruits, they have a higher satiety effect, meaning that they have this ability to make us feel full compared to a similar amount of high energy dense foods such as biscuits or chocolate. So despite them having a whole lot more calories than your salad foods have or your fruits and vegetables, they don't have very much nutrition in them. So this is why foods higher in protein are actually a lot more satiating than carbohydrates and fat, but fiber deserves a special mention for its ability to increase feelings of fullness in the body. And so the more satiated we are from our meals or our snacks, the less likely we are to kind of pick on those bickies late at night or reach for the ice cream after dinner or those sweet treats and just mindlessly snack throughout the day. So these are the things that are known to drive weight gain and thereby associated things like obesity. So I guess going back to this overall summary for this particular slide, I'm going to say that understanding if you're eating due to hunger or other factors is really what's key to fostering a healthier relationship with food. This is one that always really interests me from people because I hear it actually a lot more than we should. But does fruit have a lot of sugar and thereby need to be cut out? True or false? While some people answer, I'm just going to take a sip of water. False. See the evidence. So fruit, it does contain sugar, but it does contain natural sugars. So we're talking fructose, glucose. These are very important fuel sources in the body. So when we say fuel sources, it means that every cell in our body needs this kind of energy. So the reason we don't really have to be so worried or concerned about the sugars that we get in our fruits is because it's accompanied by other good things like that fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. And it's a combination of these things that creates something called a synergistic effect. So this is what's known as something called a food matrix. And it's this matrix that actually influences how the body processes and absorbs nutrients and offers a lot of health benefits. So fruits are considered really nutrient-dense foods. So they give us a lot of essential vitamins and minerals. But, and we spoke about this in a lot more detail in that first webinar when it comes to managing inflammation. And we spoke at length about how they can reduce things like inflammation, and they're very important for reducing things like oxidative stress. And so they're essential to, feeding our joint structures with essential nutrition. So it's these nutrients that support our bodily functions, and they include things like good immune function, skin health, and overall well-being. And calorie counting is the only way to lose weight. False? No. For some people, it might bring back bad memories of what this process entailed. But for all of you who are saying false, you are absolutely spot on. I've touched on caloric intake a few times by now, and so it does probably deserve a special mention. But weight loss does occur when there is a caloric deficit. What this fundamentally means when we say this is that you burn more calories than you consume. That's all a calorie deficit is. Conversely, weight gain can occur when there is a caloric surplus, when you're consuming a lot more calories than your body needs. But eating the right amount of calories for your body and physical activity levels is important, but this calorie deficit doesn't just have to be achieved through cutting out meals or cutting out food groups, restricting our diets and tracking every calorie that comes in. It can easily be achieved through eating more whole foods over the day, eating less processed foods, and increasing physical activity levels. Seems really simple, but that's the most effective way to actually achieve that deficit. One way to actually reduce the overall energy density of your diet is to simply eat more vegetables. Vegetables are typically higher in water, fiber, low in fat, but they're very filling, which means that they help displace more energy dense foods on the plate, like those more processed foods. And so for some people, they love to count calories. It can be really useful for them in managing their weight, but it is often considered very unsustainable. It requires meticulous tracking of not just foods, but your beverages as well. It can be super time consuming. It can be really complex and annoying as well. It tends to emphasize more on the quantity of calories consumed rather than looking at the nutritional quality of foods. And so when we think about what we've spoken about tonight, it's really important to focus more on the quality of our foods that we're eating if we're talking long-term sustainable approaches to healthy weight management. So for some people, this constant tracking of the calorie intake, it can really lead to that unhealthy preoccupation with food as well, which can feed into that vicious dieting cycle that we spoke about before, that is tied in with those emotional struggles in that relationship with food. So this approach, it's really not conducive with a positive relationship with eating. What I've got here in front of you is a little bit of an illustration just to show you how a calorie deficit can be achieved through diet without restriction. So on the left-hand side here, what you're seeing is person A has a goal to achieve fat loss. They have a calorie target of around 1,600 calories. But what I want to draw your attention to is the variety that they've included. You can see that there's a lot of fruit, there's a variety of healthy carbohydrates, there's protein in every meal, but also you can see the inclusion of a single ice cream portion to allow for that, single serve treat. I would say because the meals are well balanced here, they're smaller portions, more nutrient dense, this person wouldn't be struggling with things like satiety, feeling constantly hungry. On face value as well, it does look like it would be a very palatable menu. And these are the things that are important to factor in for those long-lasting nutrition habits. With this kind of approach, you could see how there would be consistency in the diet, and you could expect to see some good weight loss results after a couple of weeks. On the right-hand side, you can see a very different approach here. Person B is following a very relatively plain, rigid diet. You can see although they're eating more simple meals and snacks, I would argue that there is no fruit, not much dairy, not much protein, but surprisingly, they're consuming a lot of energy throughout the day. And for some people, if this is exceeding what they actually need, it is surprising to these kind of people how little weight loss is actually achieved after following this for weeks and months. So this is when we go back and we want to think about what I was saying with rigid diet patterns, rigid mindsets, and how this diet clearly could feed back into that vicious dieting cycle. So again, this is another reason to highlight why it would be beneficial to work with someone like a dietitian or a nutritionist to help you implement a more targeted, individualized approach that is actually suited to your individual needs, your preferences, and your goals. So what we've got here is just a summary of tips. I hope by now that we're able to recognize that dieting isn't the only way to achieve long-term weight loss. There's no best diet for weight loss that will work for every person, but the key to long-term success actually lies in some of the common themes and strategies that help predict healthy weight maintenance. So that includes being more active, moderately reducing the energy density of the diet, but prioritizing good quality proteins in the meal. Trying to eat at home more often is an important one, because the more we can control our food intake, we can cook more, the healthier our dietary intake is going to be and the healthier our food choices are going to be. If you can aim for 2 to 3 serves of fruit daily and at least 5 different vegetables, just focusing on those whole foods can make a significant impact in our diets. Doing a hunger check-in before you snack, just to make sure we're not eating because we're bored or we're eating because we're emotional, but, tuning into those body's natural cues is really important for fostering that healthy relationship with food. And again, going back to just being physically active every day. So just some reminders here, really, that the best diet isn't one size fits all. It's one that actually makes you feel good physically and mentally. Some people talk about MyFitnessPal or Easy Diet Diary. They're tracking tools. They're pretty much used to actually look at what foods you're consuming, and to some extent they can help and be beneficial for some people. Other people, it could add that unnecessary complexity to healthy eating. So I would say use these at your own discretion. The Get Healthy service is strongly recommended. It's a free online phone call service, which is led by dietitians, and pretty much they coach you with 6 or 7 free phone calls across 6 to 7 weeks. And they basically help assess where you're currently at, what your goals are, and work with you to build a plan that will help you achieve your goals. So they really specialize in weight loss. The best part is that they're free. And you can also speak to your GP. You could inquire with your private health insurance or see a dietitian. Sometimes your private health insurance actually offer weight management plans, and for some people they can be free, for some they can be subsidized, but that's another good avenue to explore. So good supports and services, you can see the Get Healthy service. This is the phone number to call up if you're interested in joining that. It's a government-led program, and I would highly recommend it if you've never spoken to a professional before about your diet. You can also look at Nutrition Australia. They're a non-profit organisation, so they have a lot of resources, recipes, and healthy eating guides to help guide you and help you get started. You can also find a local dietitian. So if you go to Dietitians Australia, you can actually find a dietitian near you. You might need to go to the doctor to get a referral sometimes, but there are so many professionals out there who can support you, offer expert advice, but give you personalized strategies for effective weight management. So just a summary here, we have really good evidence that weight loss is effective for improving joint pain, function, improving mobility, could even help prevent structural changes. Your diet and exercise are the best ways to achieve that weight loss, but we should forget perfection and strive towards making progress. So they're probably my 3 key points that I'm going to leave you with. And what I'm going to do is open up the floor to some questions. Does anyone have questions for me?
I like, it's a comment, but you might like to comment on it. I have great difficulty waiting 20 minutes before I have something, you know, they say if you wait 20 minutes to let your food settle, then you won't feel the need to have anything more to eat. I find that really challenging.
Okay. Rosamond, what I would encourage you to do is actually consider maybe looking at the balance of foods that were in your meal. So was there a good balance of protein? Was there enough good carbohydrates, enough vegetables filled with that protein, that fiber, carbohydrates to keep, to make you feel full? So the 20-minute rule can be useful for some, but sometimes just going back and looking at that meal you just consumed can be really eye-opening sometimes to realize maybe that meal wasn't nutrient dense enough to keep me feeling full.
The other thing is so if I find I drink more water, then during that time, that will help me feel more full.
Yeah, definitely. Water can do that to you. And again, sometimes our hunger can be mistaken easily for thirst. So sometimes when we're actually dehydrated and we're thirsty, we perceive it as hunger. And so we're eating. And that's why when we drink that water, we're actually okay.
Thank you.
Why? That's okay. I've got some questions coming in the chat box. So why is it some days you're hungry and then other days you're starving, even if you're exercising and eating similar amounts? Sometimes we actually just have a higher, I guess, energy output. And I guess that energy isn't just expended through physical activity. We use energy on things like keeping our metabolism running. We use energy in things like producing hormones in the body. So there's a lot of different kind of ways our body uses energy. Sometimes our metabolism is revving up a little bit more. And so we need, that's why we go back and we talk about the quality of our foods, because all those good quality foods are going to help stabilize that a bit. Our hormones can play into that a lot, sometimes with blood sugar level imbalances. If we haven't eaten enough carbs or we've eaten too many carbs, you will see that actually can cause a fluctuation in your appetite some days. Does that kind of answer your question, Kerry? If we do prefer to follow a diet, which one is best? Oh, so that's a big one. The best one is one that works for you. So what foods do you like? What are your preferences? What time of the days do you prefer to eat through? They're all the things that need to be factored into, you know, a dietary plan. If you do want to try to achieve some weight loss through dieting. But that's why it's really good to work with someone so they can actually assess what those things are and help you structure that diet and find an approach that actually suits you. Oh, Catherine, I can see you've raised a hand.
Hi, Mary. I hope you can hear me okay.
I can hear you.
It's a wonderful seminar. Thank you, as always. And I'm really grateful I was able to make it. Something I would really appreciate your thoughts on is the impact of fatigue and trying to manage. I don't know about others, but fatigue is a big issue for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that it can be made worse by pain that you're dealing with that disrupts sleep. And oftentimes, I think a lot of people forget the importance of sleep and adequate rest and learning to accept how to manage debilitating fatigue. I'm not talking about just tired, it's the fatigue that comes with it.
Fatigue is very different to just general tiredness. So we do actually have some webinars scheduled for the future that do cover things like fatigue in more depth and things like sleep and sleep's impacts on fatigue. But we definitely have a lot more sessions coming up where we'll delve into that with a little bit more depth. Catherine?
That's wonderful, because that is also relevant to diet and exercise.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I just thought it would be helpful to have you talk about that in the context of it's not just diet and exercise. That fatigue, oftentimes people are just scrambling.
Yeah, of course, fatigue can be very debilitating for us. So next, that actually brings me into next week's session. We will be talking more about meal prep techniques. So we'll be talking a little bit about making things easier in the kitchen and cooking healthy. And that's particularly relevant when we do struggle with things like fatigue. So hopefully next week's session, we'll be able to complement that a little bit more, Catherine. For the rest of us who are sticking around, I'm just going to let you know that I'm going to close up the recording now, and I will let you know